Each year, between Good Friday and Easter morning, I sit down after all the activity of Lent and Holy Week. And before all the joy of Easter morning, I sit down sometime on Saturday afternoon and meditate on a brief but meaningful Easter message. As I began that process again this year, there was a particular memory that just kept flooding my mind. And after a while, I began to realize the memory is the message. So I'm going to share that memory with you this morning. My senior year of seminary, the Easter Vigil at the seminary chapel was scheduled for 4 a.m. on Easter morning. Particularly at that time in my life, 4 a.m. was not a good time for me to be in optimum condition for worship. It would still be a challenge. Our early service today was at 7:45, which is a good time for the first service of Easter. So the college chapel at Sewanee had their Easter Vigil on Saturday night, and I chose to go to worship at 8 p.m. on Saturday night rather than at 4 a.m. on Easter morning. And I did look around before the liturgy began and realized there in the college chapel I was the only member of the seminary community in the room. Everyone else there were college people or town people. It's a memory, that Easter vigil on that Saturday night. The preacher was a man who was, by that time, deep into his 80s, a man named Geralt Jones, who had been Bishop of Louisiana. But Bishop Jones had been retired for years, but was one of those senior clergy who made at least a second home on the mountain at Sewanee. So we knew who Bishop Jones was, and it was he who had been asked to preach on that Easter Eve. So I was 27 years old then. I was on the verge of being ordained. I was on the verge of being turned loose on the Episcopal Church. Me, a weightlifter, an introvert. In many ways, an unlikely parish minister, but I'd felt the call, and the call had been affirmed. And so there I was, nearing graduation and the beginning of a lifetime of service to the church in the ordained ministry. I'm telling you all that to tell you this: I was in the mood to listen on Easter Eve, just prior to being ordained a deacon and then a priest shortly thereafter. And I did listen to Bishop Jones. He was a man in small stature physically, but he had a big voice. When Bishop Jones spoke, you could hear the years. You could also hear the wisdom and the maturity in his voice. I don't remember anything else about the sermon except for the tagline, what Bishop Jones wanted us to remember. I do, all these years later. At the end of the sermon, Bishop Jones reminded us Christianity is serious business. In the context of Easter, on that Easter vigil night. So 35 years later, according to my math, here we are on this Easter morning in this beautiful setting. The setting is such to remind us Christianity is serious business. We've had a strong Lenten season in St. Luke's. We've had a lot of education offered, a lot of service opportunities. A lot of outreach has been done during this Lenten season. But now our celebration begins. All of these symbols are meant to remind us of the substance of our Easter faith. All the thought that went into this beautiful setting, all of the generosity that was given to help make the church again so beautiful this Easter. It all is meant to remind us of the real reason for all of this. The power of God raised Jesus from the dead. And for all time, it was made known that death does not have the final word. And down deep, that's why we're here today. All of our Easter rituals, all of the symbols, all of it is meant to remind us death does not have the final word. It's one thing to give intellectual assent to the Easter faith. It's another thing entirely to let that reality sink in our deepest inner selves. We worship a God whom we will see one day. We worship a God whose power raised Jesus from the dead. And one day we will know that power. It is serious business to be offered peace that passes understanding. It is serious business to be offered the chance to represent Jesus Christ to others in our everyday comings and goings. This is a day for spiritual rebirth. This is a day for a spiritual reset. Today is a day to remember down deep, what is all of this about? The assurance that death is not the final word. That ultimately all of us will know the power of God through the resurrection from the dead. Serious business. It's also a glorious calling. I close with this. It's traditional in the Episcopal Church to include the baptismal covenant as part of the worship on Easter Day. The first half of the covenant is a restatement of the creed, but the second half of the baptismal covenant includes 5 probing questions. They are meant to be probing and they're meant to be haunting. They're meant to stick with us. I ask us all, please, let's hear the questions today in their deepest implications. And let's answer the questions not by rote, but from the depth of our being. Today is a day to bathe in the love of God made known to us most fully in Jesus. Today is a day to remember the seriousness of our calling. Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia.